This week, a lot of people have been asking Donald, how did you manage to make The Celebrity Apprentice a show that should take no longer than a single cab ride, an excruciating 3 hours this week? Simple. One fantastic hour of tasks, one spectacular hour of boardroom, and one terrific hour of B-roll footage, including feet walking, clocks ticking, and ferries pulling in and out of Ellis Island. Of course, there were two reasons why The Celebrity Apprentice was 3 hours long this week. Number one, to get NBC one step closer to their ultimate goal of having only 4 shows on their entire network. Number two, to compete with the fantastically successful HBO original series, Game of Thrones. Truth be told, I spent my entire weekend watching Season 1, and I'm going to try to appeal to some of those Game of Thrones fans right here in this week's recap of Celebrity Apprentice. First off, by doing this week's episode from the actual Game of Thrones throne. In the first test this week, both teams set out to create a New York City guidebook, neither of which could in any way compare to the opening credits of Game of Thrones, the ultimate guidebook to the land of Westeros. The team leaders were Dee Snider and Teresa Giudice. For those of you who are not familiar, Dee Snider is the one that looks like a Targaryen. Regis Philbin was our guest judge this week. He's been in television for over 50 years. So in this, our epic 3-hour episode, I thought it would be a fitting tribute for this icon of broadcasting to put him on our show for a full 35 seconds. In the end, the men's team won, no surprise there, which left the women to duke it out in the boardroom. At one point, Lisa Lampanelli's voice got so annoying, I wanted to drop her out of the moon door. Game of Thrones. Ultimately, I fired Debbie Gibson, which meant one thing, that once again I did not have to fire Diana Mendoza. In Game of Thrones, beautiful women are covered in dragons. I would love to cover Diana Mendoza in dragons. And of course, by dragons, I mean my own hands. After switching up the teams, it was Arsenio Hall versus Lou Ferrigno in a battle to see which team could come up with the best campaign for Walgreens' Walk with Walgreens program. Walk with Walgreens? Sounds stupid. In the second boardroom of the night, it appeared as though my son Eric had eaten an entire tube of chapstick. As terrific as Lou Ferrigno is, he couldn't seem to lead the reshuffled Forte team to victory. Sidebar, Lou Ferrigno is a fantastically brilliant guy, but we do in fact believe that he may have eaten Debbie Gibson after I fired her in the first half of the show. Seriously, no one's heard from Deborah, and we are getting a bit concerned. Lou, if you're watching and you did in fact eat her, please call her family. They're not mad. They just want to know what happened to their sweet little girl. Just when you thought the episode couldn't get any longer, I fired Dee Snider. This was due in large part to the fact that we got email confirmation that Dee Snider was in fact a Targaryen. Here's a photo of Dee's reaction right after being fired. Game of Thrones.